Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Taylor Riggs in for Emily Chang, and stocks managing to end mostly in the green today, with tech continuing to outperform. The Nasdaq ended the week up more than 3%, and it is now up almost 4% for the year. All of this comes on optimism about all 50 states being partially reopened now for the Memorial Day weekend. And stocks brushing off concerns as well about rising tensions between the U.S. and China. Here to break down all of the market action is Abigail Doolittle, our markets correspondent. Abigail, the macro news earlier this morning seemed to be about rising trade tensions between the U.S. and China, but then stocks mostly ending up in the green. What is going on inside the action this afternoon?
Well, you know, a really sleepy day overall ahead of the long weekend, Taylor. I think that was a big piece of it, actually. You just have traders not at their desks, checking out just a little bit early, despite the fact that we have that macro news. Plus, it's a little bit of a repeat of last year. Some folks are used to it to some degree. So at the end of the day, mixed action. But you can see, unlike yesterday, very interesting, we actually had tech closing higher. The Nasdaq 100 up by about 0.4%. The chip sector, which got hit yesterday on the rising U.S.-China tensions, actually rebounded today. Some of that had to do with the NVIDIA results, but some of it also indicates that traders are just brushing off the macro concern. Where we're seeing those concerns play out, though, are for some of those, not surprisingly, the China ADR. So the New York FANG index was down today because, of course, Baidu and Alibaba are in there. So that was down about 0.7%. And the Golden Dragon China ETF down 4%, down for another day. And that is comprised of Chinese companies listed here in the U.S. So, of course, that fear that these companies will be delisted. And this is really an interesting dynamic on the week, too, because on the week, it was a big week for U.S. stocks, Taylor. We had the major averages up more than 3%, but relative to China shares, just over the last 2 days, going down closer to 4%. That's something to think about in the week ahead, because that's the second down week in a row for China stocks, while the U.S., again, they managed to eke out a gain, or actually a pretty solid rise of about 3%. But if you continue to see China shares go down, that could be a bearish tell on the U.S.
Abigail, you mentioned that the FANGs were down today, but one notable exception continues to be Facebook. It was up 1.5% today, a seventh straight day of gains here. What's behind the strength that we're seeing in Facebook?
It's a little surprising in a way, Taylor, and it was very surprising to me to learn that Facebook is actually up much more than Amazon over the last 2 months since the March 23rd bottom, if you will. Facebook up about 60% over that time period. Amazon up about half of that, and I would have thought Amazon would do great, but of course Amazon, they're saying for the current quarter that profits may be an issue, whereas Facebook in their last quarter, it was better than expected. Some of the strength really being driven by the fact that people are at home playing games, e-commerce, technology, and it seems, Taylor, that this company is adapting to this pandemic situation very well. Just recently, Mark Zuckerberg recently said that they plan to push remote hiring. They're also telling current employees that if they want to move out of Silicon Valley, they can do that. They can work remotely. And they're also saying that they have discovered a big worry going into working at home was that employees wouldn't be that productive. They're finding that their employees are more productive at home. So Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, said that within 10 years, 50% of the company could be working remotely. That is truly a new normal if that does happen.
Yeah, well, now, Abigail, that's a story that we continue to cover here on Bloomberg Technology, and so fascinating about the changing landscape, about the work from home environment. Another tech company that I wanted to talk about was Alibaba. Out with earnings this morning, looks like the consumer over in China isn't as strong in a post-pandemic environment that they were before. What other insight did you glean from Alibaba today?
Well, it's so interesting that you're saying that, Taylor, because that would be my main takeaway also. A little bit surprising, the idea that this company really didn't knock it out of the park during the lockdown in China. And over the last 3 days, the shares of Alibaba falling. They put up a decent first quarter, but growth at its slowest pace on the top line of 22% ever. Also, for the year, the forecast really not exciting, folks. And what you were talking about, that dynamic of Alibaba really not doing as well as perhaps some of the e-commerce stocks here in the U.S. is showing on the year. Alibaba not doing as well. There's not a perfect U.S. comp, but if we were to compare it to Amazon and eBay, Alibaba simply is underperforming. So it suggests that the China consumer really is not as strong, at least as the U.S. consumer, and partially this is during the lockdown, coming out of the lockdown. So this is something else to keep in mind, especially with the Shanghai Composite down for for a second week in a row. Perhaps the recovery in China is not what we might hope it would be. We have to look for all these different clues, of course, because the transparency out of that country, not always great. Alibaba suggesting, as you said, that the consumer there may just not be as strong as we would hope.
Yeah, 100% right. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle, thank you, as always, for joining us. And I want to continue our look at Alibaba's performance during this pandemic with CFRA equity analyst John Freeman. John, first talk to me about what you got from Alibaba's earnings. 22% growth, sort of the lowest that the company has had. Are you worried at all about the strength of the Chinese consumer and then therefore Alibaba's position here this quarter?
Yeah, actually, I thought the quarter, in terms of the fundamentals, I thought the quarter was surprisingly strong. If you consider the fact that the first quarter Chinese GDP apparently, and a lot of these GDP growth estimates for China, are you going to have to take them all relative? But it looked like it was down about 6%. And Alibaba grew revenue 19%. Cloud in particular was very strong. Now at 12% or 11% of revenue, and that grew 58% year over year. I mean, I kind of expected a lot of the commercial stuff to get hit. But I thought they put up decent numbers. The thing that bothers me, though, is all of the macro stuff. And there's a whole long list. If you want me to, I can go through it. But, there's a lot of very concerning things with regard to the macroeconomic environment, China, the exploding debt levels,
Right.
And then on top of that, now we've got a trade war, right? Or at least trade,
Yeah, so let's break those down. I want to start first on the macroeconomic environment. Let's say about China's growth rate, and GDP and debt levels, as you alluded to. If you thought that the consumer was a little bit stronger than we thought that they would be in the first quarter, how then does the rest of the macro picture for the rest of the year then set you up and how you're thinking about this company?
Well, yeah, no, and that was kind of interesting. So I thought, they performed well in the quarter, and I thought their commentary seemed pretty upbeat. However, we just had the Chinese government basically say they're not going to stick to any number. They don't know what number it's going to come out to, for GDP growth in 2020. And I think that's a real problem. Not only because of, it means maybe it's probably worse than, estimates, right? It'll probably, it might even be a contraction, right? However, it casts a lot of uncertainty in an already, I think overheated market, at least in terms of debt levels. In 2008, the estimated total debt was 160% of GDP. And then it was, it hit 200% in 2016, and then 310% in 2019. That starts to get a little, that sounds like basically jet-fueled growth to me, right?
Right.
And now that the growth is not there to back it up, there may be concern. That's why I'm concerned with
so,
the
John,
China macro.
Talk to me also about some of the concerns that have recently come up from a Senate bill that was passed that would potentially be looking at delisting Chinese companies that are listed here on U.S. exchanges if they don't follow accounting rules, if they can't prove that they are not controlled by a foreign entity. Alibaba could be on that list. Is that also a worry of yours?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think, I think everybody gets to a negotiated settlement. All other variables held equal, but I think in this environment, you can't hold any variable equal, right? I mean, Xi Jinping is clearly locking down, even extending his, grip to Hong Kong. That's concerning because that means, it's more CCP, rule by CCP fiat rather than rule of law, which comes all the way back to what a U.S. shareholder actually owns when they own a share of Baidu or Alibaba. And it's that whole variable interest entity. There's a real kind of odd shell game above and beyond what you normally have with ADR with these issues and with these equities. And I think that's just an additional risk, right? It's something that, I think is, going to actually come down, but there's always that threat and there's always that sort of that discount, basically, that you get for the next couple of years because of all of these macro risks sort of potentially also feeding off of each other, right?
Yeah, John, finally here, what about competition? ByteDance, Tencent, Is any of those a threat here to Alibaba?
I don't think so. It appears that even more so than maybe it was 10 years ago. I think the Chinese government has kind of picked favorites. Companies that cooperate enough with them with the controls that they want to exert, and that's Tencent, right? That's Alibaba. Baidu, a little shakier on that front. But I think at the end of the day, I don't see a lot of competition for either the cloud business, right, or the core e-commerce business. Not inside of China, though. Outside of China, I'm not counting on a whole lot of expansion for Alibaba there at the time being.
Well, and always lively and enthusiastic John Freeman there of CFRA. Thank you for joining us. Now, a biopharmaceutical company said it has found a treatment for COVID-19, but is it too soon to celebrate? We will hear from Dr. Henry Ji, CEO and co-founder of Sorrento Therapeutics. All of that next. This is Bloomberg. Moving on to the race to find a vaccine and a therapy for COVID-19, San Diego-based Sorrento Therapeutics recently said that its antibody cocktail could completely treat the virus infection. Shares jumped over 200% last Friday on the announcement, but have lost gains since as critics increasingly question its efficacy. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Henry Ji, co-founder and CEO of Sorrento. Doctor, thank you for joining us. What do you say to some of those critics about what your lab tests have shown you about being able to cure, treat, provide an immune response here to COVID-19?
So thank you for having me here. Firstly, the COVID-19, since the COVID-19 started, the whole thing is all about antibodies. If you can take a look at the people wanted to get the antibody, for detecting the antibody, whether you determine whether you have a viral infection or not viral infection. And there's a lot of companies doing, a lot of academic groups doing vaccine. It's all about antibody too. Whether we can generate antibody from the body that be neutralizing and preventing viral infection. In this case, you want 100% prevention of viral infection with the vaccine. Now, for therapeutics, when you have a virus already infected, it's all about antibody too. Reason for that is you want antibody binds to the virus and you want to get rid of them and preventing them enter into healthy cells and preventing them from replicating that increase the viral load. That will increase the complication down the road.
Right.
That's causing the COVID-19. So the whole business about the COVID-19 is all about antibody from detection, vaccination, and treatment.
There's been some confusion about calling it a cure if it hasn't been done and tested on humans. Can you clarify your position on calling it a cure, if that was accurate or not?
No, actually, we did not calling it a cure. We say that we potentially have an agent, antibody, that potentially, if it gets through the FDA testing to be safe and effective, then potentially that will be a cure. This is all pending our testing results in human. However, you're starting with the first step. Your first step, you have to have a neutralizing antibody that prevents completely, I'm emphasize here, completely in the cell culture setting that preventing virus from infecting the healthy cells.
Right.
In that case, we have it. Now, it's totally different from anti-cancer drug. When you have anti-cancer drugs, which we do quite a few in our company, when you have the cancer in mice and you can eradicate the cancer in mice, but you don't call that potential cure. Reason is that the cancer acts differently in human body than in the mice. We have a lot of compound eradicate cancer. However, we never call that potentially a cure. Here, antiviral, antibacterial is different. When you have an agent, you can demonstrate that prevent the virus from infecting the healthy cells in the cell culture setting in vitro. You can prevent it completely, viral infection. you may have onto something that potentially could be a cure for the disease, preventing them from infecting you, preventing them from continue infecting the healthy cells and increase the viral load. And that's potentially a cure.
Do you have an updated timeline on when we could see more studies, a wider range, human trials, when we could really start to see the therapies be distributed to a mass market?
Yes. So what we are doing right now, day and night with our company, we have a few hundred people working on these things right now, about to create the cell lines that manufacture these cells on the CGMP guidance from the FDA. And we manufacture product, and then we get into IND, which is the initial new drug application. And we hope we can get the whole package, IND package, in places to file within the next 2 to 3 months. And by the time of July, August window, we will be able to hopefully get the FDA consent, get into the human testing to start with, potentially starting with a patient gets into ICU after the infection. If that moves with a safety demonstrated and potential efficacy demonstrated, we can move forward to potentially get to a prevention, which is giving the healthy people.
Yeah,
dose.
Doctor, finally here, there's been some skepticism about acquisition offers that have been made for Sorrento Therapeutics. How do you respond to people who've said that some of those acquisition offers may have been to move the share price? Are you in talks with anyone to be acquired? How do you respond?
So this is absolutely nonsense to move the stock. Reason for that is we have a very big fully human antibody library. We have one FDA approved drug, and we have multiple candidates in the clinical testing, some of them in pivotal study, and the value is tremendous. And some of the folks seeing the value, they may have interest to acquire us, but it's unsolicited from us, which nothing we can do, but we reject them all. Reason for that we believe the value is tremendously undervalued right now.
Well, Dr. Henry Ji of Sorrento Therapeutics, always appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And up next, an exclusive conversation with the CEO of VMware on the company's efforts to get contact tracing going in the UK. That's next. This is Bloomberg. The UK's mobile app for contact tracing is being co-developed by VMware, and the CEO addressed that development on Bloomberg TV earlier today.
And we've been working closely with NHS, the National Health System of UK, to develop what we think is the best capability that's been done anywhere in the world. We think you need 4 constituents at the table. You need the epidemiologists, the medical experts. Does it help save lives? The political bodies. Is it safe and proper to get the economy started, right, in the balance of human and personal interest? The ethicists and privacy experts. Is it the right balance of near and long-term and protection of personal privacy? And then number 4 is the technologist, us. Is it implemented well? Is it secure, right? Is data protection performed superbly? And we believe, working with the NHS, and now we're in trial in the Isle of Wight, which is going very well, we believe we've hit a good compromise of all 4 of those. And of course, at the top of that heap is, does it help save lives, right? And having the medical experts at the table. So we feel very good about that. And as the NHS and the government has said, we're expecting that to come forward to the people of UK very soon.
What's the biggest risk to your forecast for this, Pat? I mean, clearly there's a lot of companies that would like to get in on this space because there's only growth there, right, if it works?
Yeah, we're viewing this, we are developing on behalf of the NHS. We've also said that we're out to make this broadly available. We're far more interested in saving lives and restarting the economy with the NHS. We've also open sourced the technology. We believe this has 2 benefits. One is it will allow people to really mitigate any concerns of privacy and how their data is handled. They get to go look at the code and make sure that it's implemented well. But also, we hope to raise all boats, right? We hope many such capabilities do emerge worldwide, and other countries may choose to implement it in their own way. What we also see, and maybe the third point would be, is that over time, we absolutely believe there needs to be international collaboration. There is no boundaries to the COVID. It has obeyed no national limitations, and it must become something that has international as well as statewide here in the U.S. Collaboration, so information can be shared, people can be identified, and the effects of the pandemic can be minimized.
Pat, Guy in London. Look, the debate here is quite a simple one. Why is the UK government going down a road that is different to the likes of Google and Apple? They have decided that they are going to produce a more automated product that isn't centralized in the way that your product is. Why is the more centralized product the way to go?
We would point out two things. The Google and Apple, they are working on this, and they've just started to put forward some of their ideas for it. We have a shipping app that we're doing with the NHS. We are months ahead of saving lives and restarting the economy. So we're actually quite thrilled with the momentum that the NHS has said. We're going to move quickly, and we've partnered with them to get this developed very rapidly. Secondly...
Oh, a little bit of journey there for us. Thanks there, Pat.
Oh, sorry about that. And then secondly, as Google and Apple start bringing forward their technology, and we're engaged with them, we're looking forward that there may be opportunities to further build on some of the work that they've done and complement the work that's already been accomplished very effectively with the NHS to date.
One of the key things about track and trace is that you need fast results in terms of testing. And at the moment, that is not being delivered upon by the NHS, by government here in the UK. Does the product work if we don't have the test results back, say, within 24 hours? What is the product looking like when you get kind of, what kind of results are you getting if the data that is coming back into the system is 4, 5, even 10 days old?
Well, clearly, with incubation periods that can be 14 days long, anything that's less than 14 days should be beneficial. But clearly, the smaller that window becomes, we believe the greater the efficacy could be. And again, as I said, the four constituents at the table, the medical, public health professionals, this is exactly why they need to be sitting at the table and helping to guide on notification, whether it be around explicit testing versus symptoms, and working through some of those different trade-offs. And our job at the table is make sure it's done well.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Taylor Riggs in New York. As the debate over reopening the economy rages on, digital workflow company ServiceNow is trying to help people get safely back into their offices. The company released a suite of apps designed for companies to manage essential procedures. Joining us now is ServiceNow CEO Bill McDermott. Bill, you created this suite of apps, 4 different apps, helping companies to get their employees back into the office. What do you see as the biggest challenge? What are companies telling you about some of the biggest challenges that they're trying to solve, and how this app may help them in that?
Well, companies today realize, Taylor, that it's a work-from-anywhere environment. They are no longer thinking about offices with desktop computers as the standard for their workers. They know that it'll be a hybrid world, and as workers return to the office, they will need to follow certain protocols to keep them safe and ensure their wellness and obviously the sustainability of their companies. So ServiceNow launched a suite of safe workplace applications, things like employee readiness, so we know if employees are ready to go. We properly screen their health, of course, ensure the workplace PPE inventory management, so the necessary tools are there in a safe work environment, and of course the safe workplace management application, because you have to make sure these facilities are up to the highest standards. And finally, you offer this on a dashboard so the leaders of companies can see in each geography, in each facility, specifically how things are operating on one sheet of glass. So it's comprehensive, it's available, and it's already been rolled out to 170 of the world's largest enterprises and governments and there's been about 1,000 installs in the last 24 hours.
What are the companies telling you about what they need most? Is it help with physical moving of the desks, physical placement? Is it help with getting help on the elevator, getting your temperature checked, getting that PPE equipment that you described? What are companies saying that they need help with the most right now?
Yeah, it's an all of the above. You know, digital transformation is both the opportunity of our time, and it's also right now in high demand because we have to satisfy the experiences of employees and customers in a very uncertain environment, which means that workflow and really looking at the world from the employee in and the customer in now needs to be the most important thing. And I call this the workflow revolution because everything is mobile and it has to be consumer grade. People are going to work from anywhere. So you have to give them the tools, whether it's their phones, their computers, the networking gear that they need, wherever they need to be working. And ultimately, the experience has to be flawless. And as I look at companies today, I mean, do they even know on a post-check basis if their employees are ready to go? Have we the proper health screening processes in place? You know, our application, for example, allows you to check the health of the employees prior to them entering the building and store the results, anonymize it, and then take a strong look at that facility and that location to really see if you're up to the highest standards. And you mentioned it. I mean, the bottom line is we have to make sure employees are safe. And if we look at our own teams, for example, because we run this ourselves, we're looking at an environment today where we have to study every location around the world, and we have to make sure we know every location by floor, who's sitting there, is the distance proper, and all these facilities have to be world-class to ensure the scheduling of cleaning crews to maximize safety and minimize disruption in the workplace. So it's all of the above, and it's happening at once, and we're ready to go.
But to get there, employees have to be willing to come in. You mentioned that there is a survey asking if employees, what their level of comfortability was. What is that survey telling you about how willing employees are to come back in?
Only 1/3 of employees today on a national and international average are looking forward to coming back into the office, which means 2/3 are not. And that's why we at ServiceNow believe it's a work from anywhere world. I, for example, as the CEO of ServiceNow, have a policy in place where no one is required to come into the office. Everyone is enabled to work from wherever they want, where they can be the most productive and feel the most safe. However, you also acknowledge that certain jobs work better in teams, and certain people are in environments where they need an office to go to, for example, get a little peace of mind. Some folks are working with mom and dad at home with kids running around, and they're looking for an environment where they can actually do their work. So we're looking at a work from anywhere philosophy, and that's what our workflow does. It enables those complex interactions to be organized in a simple way.
Let me push back a little bit on that. Facebook, for example, this week saying about half of their workforce could be at work from home. You, of course, saying that employees, indefinitely could be working from home. Does that not then take away some of the demand for your products if you're really focused on getting employees back to the office and helping to design an efficient layout and some of the products that we need here at the office? Are you worried that a work from home environment could reduce some of the demand for your products?
Oh, not at all. The opportunity for these products is really in service to our customers and to the world. Our business model is not reliant on how many of this product suite we sell. That's not the objective. We gave away 6,000 installations of emergency response when we first launched the safety applications in March. My goal here is to simply make sure that companies have a way to ensure the health and wellness of their teams and, of course, drive productivity so they can serve their customers and run sustainable businesses. So that's our goal. It's not a driver of our business model at this point, but it's obviously in high demand. I believe strongly that people should be wherever they need to be to work effectively. I'll give you an example. I mean, after the pandemic has hit, I can be in 4 continents in one day using a Zoom technology. Just so happens that Zoom is uniquely interfaced with the ServiceNow platform we call the Now platform. So I can do business anywhere in the world in real time on the Now platform and connect to all of these conversational tools in real time. That drives immense productivity. We have a knowledge event where I'm bringing together 100,000 registered customers to download and learn and absorb content over a 6-week period. And what we're finding is they're really preferring to learn that way as long as the content is exciting. So I think we're in a world where people are going to be less excited about going to big events with lots of people, whether it's a trade show or a rock concert. You know, health and wellness of people now is going to be the primary goal. And that'll certainly be the goal in the enterprise as well.
Bill, you're the CEO of a $50 billion company. So you have a very good gauge on the health of the consumer, any impact that we're seeing from rising tensions between the U.S. and China. As you take a look out at the landscape outside a post-pandemic world, where do U.S.-China rising tensions rank in your order of a list of fears as you take a look across your business?
Well, we've become, you know, a $75 billion market cap company now without relying on China as a signature marketplace. So we are a global company. We are, of course, located heavily across Asia Pacific and Japan. That is a growth market, but we're not reliant on China right now for our business model. And we committed to the capital markets to have a $10 billion cloud revenue horizon in front of us, which we obviously feel great about. And China is not included in that. I think that, you know, it's a global economy. There's going to be times where there are conflicts and differences. Government has to do what it has to do for its constituents. Business has to do what it has to do for its customers. But it's clear to me from this crisis that necessities in society will be much closer to home. Safety and wellness will be much more of a priority for the citizens of the world, and government will play a significant role in ensuring that. And I believe companies will be less reliant on a margin pursuit than they will accommodating society and the desires of governments to keep people healthy and safe in the future. And that will be a big outcome, I think, of this crisis.
And finally here, with the majority of the revenue coming from the United States, how are you looking out to how the U.S. economy recovers from here?
Well, you know, the reality is digital transformation is a $7.4 trillion market over the next 3 years. And we are the digital transformation market leader in workflow, which is clearly the best way to ensure a consumer-grade experience and to wire complex processes in a simple way. And what's cool about ServiceNow is you don't have to clean up the mess of complexity that's taken place over the last 50 years. We basically use our workflow to rewire the way companies are running their business, and we do that in a way that's simple, it's low cost, it's fast time to value, and it's got an extraordinary return on investment, which is why we're growing faster than any cloud company in the world, with a better margin profile, 100% customer loyalty, and an incredible workforce that wants to win.
Well, getting back down to the fundamentals, those margins, that income statement and balance sheet, as well as the post-pandemic world, my thank you as always to Bill McDermott, CEO of ServiceNow. And coming up, Microsoft unveils new cloud tools made specifically for healthcare systems. We'll bring you all the details next. This is Bloomberg. Microsoft introduced its first industry-specific cloud offering this week, the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare package, which was unveiled Tuesday. aims to help hospitals weather the COVID-19 pandemic. To discuss how this could impact the healthcare ecosystem and Microsoft's growth, I want to bring in RBC Capital Markets analyst Alex Zukin, who currently has an outperform rating. Alex, walk me through how sort of the integration between healthcare, technology, Microsoft's role in that makes you optimistic about some of the revenue opportunities that you see here.
Yeah, hey Taylor, thanks for having me on, and happy to comment. You know, look, I think healthcare. We had the opportunity to interview and host Dr. Greg Moore at our healthcare conference, and he's the corporate vice president for Microsoft Health. And you know, the first thing he kind of went over is that this is a really big opportunity. Healthcare spending is about $3.5 trillion annually, just in the U.S., and $7 trillion globally. You know, and I think this is a really interesting opportunity for Microsoft, particularly. It's their first industry-specific cloud effort that's bringing together all three of their main franchises in Azure, Microsoft 365, and Dynamics. And you know, we think this crisis has really accelerated the rollout of this offering, and it's an opportunity for them to really, you know, show the dynamic growth opportunity that's inherent in all of their businesses to really take healthcare into the digital age.
Alex, one of the things that Microsoft is doing is integrating their Azure cloud product, the Teams product. Is that too what you like, sort of incorporating a family suite of products here, further making it integrated?
Yeah, I mean, I think Microsoft is very unique in this ability, you know, bringing together not just you know, where these files are hosted, not just how you communicate with patients, not just how you run the actual workflows around it, but all three of them fusing those together into a unique solution specifically tailored towards the healthcare industry. And the way they're doing it is different too. They're actually partnering with their customers. They're becoming part of the fabric of their end customers' offerings. You saw a lot of partnerships announced, like the one with Nuance, as well as others this week. You know, that's a differentiated approach versus the other tech vendors.
Alex, how do you see some of this continuing in a post-pandemic world? Are you hoping that these are structural changes that hospitals, healthcare systems will continue to make, even if we start to resume life as normal?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, and I think the resounding answer is yes. I think, you know, right now, when we talk to Microsoft and we talk to the ecosystem, this digital transformation is very pertinent. It's happening all around us, but specifically, you know, the need to scale, to be agile, to quickly change the method of communication. It's not just about responding to COVID. You know, the bots that they're building to triage COVID patients, the tools that they're building to take you know, doctor burnout out of the engagement layer. Those are definitely post-COVID opportunities that'll be translated into general practice tools and best practices going forward. You know, when you need to get pre-screened to go to the ER or the ICU or urgent care, you know, those types of experiences are going to absolutely, in our opinion at least, come out of this COVID situation.
Alex, I loved reading your research note because it highlighted that the future of digital health will be an evolution from improving workflows to utilizing artificial intelligence for drug discovery and disease diagnosis. Where is Microsoft in that evolution that you see as the next forefront?
Yeah, I think Microsoft is going to be front and center, and I think this is kind of this kind of approach that they have to, again, become a part of the end customers or the companies that they're partnering with, become a part of their actual products, and really, I think, unlock. You know, part of the interview with Dr. Moore that was pretty profound. When I asked him what does success look like for Microsoft, he talked about, you know, basically having 4 billion people on the planet lacking meaningful access to healthcare, and he saw Microsoft playing a key role in creating that access, aligning with their core values to be a good corporate citizen, and also unlocking a really large and broad opportunity, not just to transform society, but to transform Microsoft as well. And so we definitely think it's a big opportunity. We think it's early, and we think Microsoft is going to play a pretty key role here.
And Alex, just on a final note to broaden it out, remind us again where you see Microsoft and that cloud product in the midst of Amazon Web Services, of Google's cloud product. How does this sort of enhance them to take on the big leader, which is AWS?
Yeah, look, I think that all of the big tech has a role to play. But what stood out most to me about Microsoft's approach was that they're not trying to disrupt the way that healthcare is being performed. They're trying to empower, they're trying to adapt, and they're trying to enhance. And I think that notion of partnering, that notion of data privacy and trust, that's different, and that positions them in a unique way, not just in healthcare, but in multiple industry segments where there is definitely a perception, at least across some industry verticals, of competition with Amazon and competition with AWS. So when you're talking to boards and CEOs and executives, there's a real opportunity for Microsoft to be looked at as a closer partner as a result of that dynamic.
Alex Zukin of RBC Capital Markets, thank you, as always, for joining us. Joining Twitter, Shopify will allow its 5,000 employees to work from home indefinitely, even after the dangers of the COVID-19 pandemic fade and cities start to lift their shutdowns. The CEO of Canadian e-commerce giant spoke to Bloomberg's Emily Chang in an exclusive interview earlier this week. Take a listen.
I do think we are seeing the end of office centricity. It used to be that the office was a place where work is being done, and being remote really meant you are like using some digital crutch to be basically in the office so that you can get work done. I think what COVID is going to accelerate is something which would have happened anyways, but would have happened many years from now, which is that really everyone rearranges their understanding of that at least for the companies that can do it, all the work is really digital by default. I think so we will not, like we expect that the majority of people will work from home and home offices in the future. We also expect
So what percentage of people would still be in the office on a regular basis?
I would say it's 20-25%, something like
really?
This. I think that there's a lot of, I come across a lot of people who say, I can't wait for this whole thing to be over because I really would like to go back to the office. I don't think there's a going back to the office the way we had. I think we will go back to something different, potentially better in some ways and potentially in some instances also worse than it might have been. And I think the first time, if you would all wake up tomorrow and saying, okay, this is back to normal time, I think we would get basically as far as the elevator banks to say, it doesn't feel right. And so I don't actually think that the demand will be there to go back in the way that that people might expect. So what we will do, like for instance, one of the rules is going to be that for our meetings, if anyone is remote, which is probably all of them, it means that we would like everyone to be in their own tile in the Zoom call or the Google Meet or something like this. That alone is going to have significant impact on the floor plans of offices. Like we are going to we're going to keep our offices closed for the next little while and actually rederive floor plans, just like all our other plans we are rederiving for the coming times.
By their own tile. By their own tile, do you mean their own cubicle? Their own? What do you mean by that?
I mean in their own little window. So just like we are now, that instead of there being a room which has 6 people in and some people are remoting in, we would like everyone to be in their own tile on the screen. And that means that the offices have to change. It's suddenly like an open floor plan or pods or whatever are no longer the kinds of things that are going to be helpful. And I think it's important to important to adjust to new realities as quickly as we can.
So would you be comfortable saying your employees can work from home forever if they want to? Jack Dorsey has basically said that at Twitter.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're not at all concerned about a negative impact on productivity or team building or morale?
I mean, it's going to be different, and there's going to be it's going to work better for some people, and it's going to be worse for some other people, and there's going to be a lot of learning to be done. I mean, this version we are doing, this like we're not really doing a digital by default. We don't have carefully designed digitally by default companies yet. We are all very, very bad versions of what that might end up looking like in the future. Right now, it will never be as bad. The tools will get significantly better, and the norms and the principles will evolve around these ideas. I don't think we have much of a choice. I don't think, again, there just isn't any choice to wake up like in a couple of weeks and just go back to the office the way they were. That's. I think the people who will try to do this will figure out very quickly that that's not a good strategy. And so I think the choice is really, are we passengers on this tidal wave of change, or do we jump in a driver's seat and just embrace it and try to figure out how to build a global world-class company by not getting together that often?
That was the Shopify CEO, Toby Lute. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everyone. And make sure to stay tuned for Wall Street Week. That's up with David Weston next. On tonight's episode, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and Gillian Tett of the Financial Times. They will look at the readiness of the consumer to re-engage as economies reopen. Lots of questions to catch, all on Wall Street Week. Coming up next, this is Bloomberg.